Cleopatra. Just saying the name conjures up these incredible images of power, seduction, and, tragedy. She's got to be one of the most famous women in all of history. But here's the thing. Our whole idea of her, pretty much everything we think we know, was written by her enemies. So today, we're going to push past all that Roman propaganda. We're looking for the real woman, not in ancient gossip, but in the laboratory. Let's separate the legend from the lab.
You know this classic image, right? Cleopatra, all dressed up as the goddess Venus, sailing down the river to meet Mark Antony? The Roman historian Plutarch paints this amazing picture, but he drops in this one critical detail that got there even before she did: the scent. Think about that. Before anyone even laid eyes on her boat, they could smell her power. This wasn't just perfume. No way. This was a weapon of influence, a full-on spectacle for the senses that announced her wealth and her divine status. So who was she, really? Was she just the seductress from the Roman history books? Or was there something much, much more going on? In this explainer, we're going to dive into a totally different theory, that Cleopatra was a master of self-branding, and that she used every single tool she had, from how she looked to how she smelled, with the absolute precision of a scientist.
Okay, first up, let's tackle the most famous part of her legend, her face. We've all heard the stories about her legendary beauty, but what's the actual reality?
Yep, this is the story we all know. You've got Roman writers like Cassius Dio, and remember, he's writing more than 100 years after she died, cementing this idea of her as this incredible beauty. And it was the perfect story for them, right? This exotic, irresistible woman who just completely ensnared Rome's greatest generals. But what did the face she actually chose to show the world look like?
Okay, but then there's this. This is her official portrait from a coin that she herself minted. And I mean, take a good look. This is not the delicate face from the Hollywood movies. Not even close. This is the face of a ruler. You've got a strong jaw, large eyes, and a really prominent nose. This is the image of a Greek monarch, a successor to Alexander the Great's dynasty. This isn't beauty. This is power.
And that's the key right there. Her public image was a carefully calculated political statement. To her own subjects in Egypt, yeah, she looked like a traditional pharaoh. But on coins like this one, the kind that would travel all over the Mediterranean, she presented herself as a strong, formidable Greek ruler. It had nothing to do with being pretty. It was all about being seen as a credible, powerful player on the world stage. All right, so her branding went way beyond just the visual. Let's move from her image to what might have been her most legendary weapon, her perfume. We all know the stories about how potent it was, but what was it exactly? I mean, how did they even make it? For centuries, her perfume was basically just a legend. But not that long ago, archaeology gave us this huge breakthrough. In Egypt, they unearthed the remains of a 2,000-year-old perfume factory, the very heart of the industry that was pumping out the most desirable scents in the entire ancient world. And you know what's wild? They actually wrote the recipes down. Ancient writers like Theophrastus and Pliny recorded the formulas. And as you can see, for the most famous perfume from that area, the Mendesian, the ingredients were remarkably consistent. You've got a base of something called balanus oil, then you add myrrh, cassia, and resin. This stuff was basically the Chanel No. 5 of antiquity. So using these ancient texts and what they found in the factory, researchers started what's called experimental archaeology. And this isn't just guesswork. They cross-referenced all the recipes, they sourced the exact kinds of plants, and they painstakingly recreated the ancient methods. One technique involved steeping ingredients in oil for over 2 months. We're talking serious chemistry here. And the final product? Well, you can forget about a light floral scent. The perfume they recreated was thick, spicy, and sweet, and incredibly strong. The researchers noted that it's remained potent for years, which totally confirms the ancient stories about how long it lasted. This was a fragrance designed to linger in a room and in your memory long after she was gone. So we have a ruler who is carefully controlling her image and her scent, but what about all those famous beauty routines? Were they just about indulgence, or was there some real science at work there too? Let's start with her iconic eyeliner. We all know the look, right? That's the aesthetic side. But check out the science on the other side. The lead-based kohl they used wasn't just makeup. It cut down the sun's glare, it repelled flies, it carried nasty diseases, and, get this, modern analysis has shown it actually stimulated an immune response to fight off bacterial infections. That's not makeup, that's practical pharmacology.
And her other routines were just as sophisticated. She used things like honey and moringa oil, both of which we know are antimicrobial. Those famous milk baths, well, maybe the whole bathing in donkey milk thing is an exaggeration, but soured milk contains lactic acid. That's a natural chemical exfoliant we still use in skincare today. Even the incense she burned was a complex formula meant to help with relaxation. See the pattern? This isn't vanity, it's applied chemistry.
Okay, so it's clear that Cleopatra was brilliant and incredibly strategic. But her greatest legacy, it might not be her political deals or even her famous legend. It might be the one that lasted quietly for over 1,000 years, her reputation as a scientist.
This is where it gets truly mind-blowing. Look at this timeline. Almost 200 years after her death, a really respected Roman doctor, Galen, is citing a book of her cosmetic and medical recipes. Now, fast forward to the 1590s, Shakespeare's time, and her recipe for treating baldness shows up in a scientific textbook. And then, in 1630, more than 1,600 years after she died, an English medical guide is still crediting Cleopatra for a recipe to prevent hair loss. That's just incredible. So this is her hidden legacy. While all the Roman historians were busy writing about the seductress, the physicians, the scientists, and the surgeons were preserving the work of an expert. Her name wasn't just famous, it became a brand, a stamp of authority in medicine and pharmacology that lasted far, far longer than her actual empire. Which brings us right back to our big question. The Roman story, the one we all know, is about a woman whose power was in her beauty. But the evidence, from her coins, from the perfume factories, from centuries of medical texts, it tells a completely different story. It tells the story of a brilliant strategist and a scientist who literally engineered her own legend. So what do you think was her true, lasting source of power? Her beauty or her brain?